Bridgeport, Connecticut, in the throes of an ordinary day, carried its provincial charm with a veneer of banality. The customary clamor of the small town served as the overture for the grand drama of the day. Amidst this spectacle, a figure of solidity and steadfastness, Detective Enoch Lewis moved with a quiet grace, a lighthouse amid the squall of quotidian life. Enoch's sun-etched face bore the resilient lines of a life of duty and hardship. The piercing gaze of his sharp eyes held an indefinable depth, as if they'd borne witness to fire and ash. Yet his voice carried the tranquility of a lullaby, spreading a sense of serenity that was hard to resist. "Morning, Martha," Enoch greeted the baker, picking up a familiarly wrapped pastry. Martha, a round, jovial woman, beamed at Enoch, her cheeks bunching up like two rosy apples. "Always punctual, aren't you? Just like this apple strudel here," she gestured at the pastry. Chuckling, Enoch strolled towards the town's fulcrum, the Bridgeport General Hospital, the cornerstone and the pulsating heart of the community. An old edifice of brick and mortar, its walls were steeped in history and countless untold stories. As he walked through the front doors, he could almost taste the tang of antiseptic, mixed with faint echoes of anxiety and relief that seemed to imbue the air. The hospital administrator, a scrawny man with glasses perched precariously on the bridge of his nose, met Enoch with a nervous smile. "Detective Lewis, thank you for coming so promptly," he said, his voice wavering like a brittle leaf in the wind. "It's about the missing persons, you see." "From this hospital?" Enoch interjected. The administrator nodded, launching into a convoluted account of the odd series of disappearances. Enoch listened, his brow furrowed in thought, the shadows of past traumas stirring beneath the firm facade. Always during the witching hour, no trace left behind, just poof, the man finished dramatically, spreading his hands wide. Enoch raised an eyebrow, digesting the information. A cryptic puzzle was being laid before him, drawing him into its enigmatic embrace. Leaning back, he watched the administrator scurry away, his footsteps echoing ominously in the quiet hallway. He sighed, feeling a familiar wave of determination washing over him. This was his duty, his debt to be repaid, and he would unravel the mystery, one thread at a time. His gaze was drawn to an old, weathered door at the end of the hallway. It bore a faded sign that read "Burn Unit." His heart quickened. The past and the present seemed to collide, stoking the embers of an old fire within him. The ordinary day in Bridgeport was retreating, giving way to an undercurrent of the extraordinary. Just as the veil between Enoch Lewis, the dutiful detective, and the cosmic warrior began to thin. The fluorescent bulbs overhead hummed a song of disquiet, mirroring Enoch's unsettling journey through the hospital's archives. The records, a labyrinth of cryptic histories and missing pieces, became a reflection of the greater puzzle he found himself entangled in. Each file he sifted through was like a forgotten lore, shrouded in a tapestry of ambiguity and whispers of forgotten conversations. His investigation meandered through a forest of statements and interviews. Every testimonial seemed to breathe life into the missing people, casting phantom shadows that danced in his mind. Dr. Lisa, the young pediatrician who'd just finished her night shift when she vanished. Night watchman Paul, who'd stepped out for a smoke break and never returned. And the patients, ordinary souls caught up in extraordinary circumstances. "Always around 3 in the morning, Doc," the burly security guard Samuel testified, his gaze lingering on the cigarette burn scars on Enoch's hand. A flicker of understanding passed between them, an unspoken dialogue, a shared dance with fire in its aftermath. The cold sterility of the hospital gave way to an eerie silence as Enoch found himself standing before the forsaken burn unit. The door groaned under his touch, a lament to its abandoned past. Inside, the air hung heavy with an atmosphere that smelt of old medicine and darker things. Dust particles danced in the shafts of the pale afternoon light that strained through the grimy windows, casting ghostly shadows. A chill crawled up his spine, a sense of déjà vu, mingling with his own haunting past. His heart hammered in his chest as he ventured deeper. A spectral figure, veiled in smoky tendrils, caught his eye from the corner of the ward. He chased after it, but the elusive figure receded further into the shadows, its form dissipating, leaving behind an aroma that was not of this world. It was a scent of ancient dust and cosmic voids, an echo of a reality beyond the understanding of mere mortals. His path seemed to darken, the walls of the burn unit closing in, as if the hospital was keeping its secrets close. The voices of the missing echoed through the maze like corridors of the old wing, their whispers seeming to ask for help and deliver a warning at the same time. His resolve hardened. As he stepped outside, night had fallen over Bridgeport, dressing the town in an ebony veil. He walked through the quiet streets, each step echoing the steady rhythm of his beating heart. A shroud of unease cloaked the town, the weight of the disappearances settling in like an unwelcome guest. He felt the gravity of his duty pull at him. His resolve to repay his debt was stronger than ever. The labyrinth of Bridgeport Hospital had invited him in, and he would tread its enigmatic paths, even as a sense of foreboding wove itself into the fabric of his destiny. With the fall of night, the idyllic charm of Bridgeport mutated into a canvas of shadows and spectral whispers. Enoch, ensnared within this transformation, felt the first tendrils of trepidation coil around his mind. His sleep was a turbulent ocean, dotted with dreams spawned from the cosmic abyss. Nebulous apparitions, an inferno that held no heat, and lurking within the fire, monstrous silhouettes watching him with eyes that echoed 1,000 alien constellations. Awakening, he found himself staring into the darkened confines of his room, the cold sweat on his brow a stark testament to the harrowing visions. His world was tilting, reality and nightmares merging into a chaotic dance, a siren call of the abyss. Yet within him, a flame of determination flickered stubbornly, illuminating the depths of his resolute spirit. Through the haze of exhaustion, he arrived at the town library, a haven of knowledge and secrets nestled amid the innocuous facade of Bridgeport. The bespectacled librarian, Miss Adele, greeted him, her eyes darting nervously to the dusty section marked local history. An unspoken dialogue passed between them, her eyes whispering warnings of the ominous trail he was about to embark upon. The more he delved into the archives, the more the labyrinthine narrative of the hospital unfolded. Whispered rumors of the hospital's founder, a renowned yet enigmatic figure with a penchant for the occult, coursed through the yellowed pages. The clandestine circumstances of the old burn unit's construction resonated within Enoch, the echoes of an age-old, malevolent chant. Amidst the twilight gloom of the hospital, he saw the spectral figure again. But this time, he did not pursue it. He met its gaze, a smoky reflection of the missing people. Its voice was a ghostly echo, a hushed whisper that spiraled into cryptic warnings, before it dissipated into thin air, leaving him amidst the deserted hallways. His heart pounded like a war drum in his chest, a rhythm that matched the pulse of the otherworldly mystery encircling him. The spectral figure, an enigma in itself, was a twisted reflection of his own path, trapped between realms, between duty and the unimaginable. The town of Bridgeport slumbered around him, oblivious to the cosmic dance unfolding beneath its ordinary visage. Yet, within its dream, it murmured troubled prophecies, and Enoch found himself standing on the precipice of an abyss that stared back. His story was intertwined with that of the spectral figures, a tragic ballad that sang of impending dread and a commitment to the truth that would not waver. The veil of reality had begun to tear, revealing glimpses of the cosmic terror hidden beneath. A crescendo of unease echoed through Bridgeport as the quaint veneer of the town revealed fractures through which the relentless hum of cosmic horror seeped. Enoch stood as a beacon in this approaching storm, the shadow of his determination spreading across the trembling town. Inside the now almost ominous hospital, he unearthed the founder's journal, an ancient relic of cryptic revelations. Each parchment was a canvas of horrific rites and unholy incantations, the ink symbols seeming to pulsate with an unearthly energy. Reading through the gnarled handwriting was akin to a forbidden dance, a descent into a symphony of madness where reality blurred at the edges. Awakening the ageless entity, offerings for the cosmic rift, Enoch murmured, his voice a grim echo in the hollow hospital. The truth that unveiled itself was monstrous. The missing persons were not merely victims, but offerings, pawns in a cosmic game of chess. The burn unit, a dormant conduit for the ancient cosmic entity, lay beneath his feet, a ticking time bomb echoing the rhythm of an ancient, sinister clock. In the depths of his nightmares, the abyss yawned wider, swallowing the remnants of normalcy. Spectral figures, no longer just passive observers, reached out from the void with smoky tendrils, dragging him into the cosmic horror he was beginning to comprehend. The visions became more aggressive. Cosmic entities with 1,000 eyes and 1,000 voices whispering of impending doom. Yet within this chaos, he found a strange solace. The eye of his storm was his loyalty, his sense of debt that burned brighter than the fire of the abyss. His descent into madness was not a downfall, but a transformation. He was no longer just a detective. He was a guardian standing at the threshold of two realities. As dawn washed over Bridgeport, the hospital stood as an unholy monument against the blush of morning light. An invisible thread of dread connected every soul in town, an intuition of the darkness nesting within their midst. Enoch felt this, the weight of the town's fear and his duty converging, pulling him into the inevitable confrontation that lay ahead. The descent into madness had been arduous, yet necessary, an ordeal that forged his resolve into a weapon against the looming horror. Even as the cosmic entity stirred within its slumber, he stood resolute, his spirit refusing to falter. The day had sunk into the chasm of twilight, leaving Bridgeport under an inky canvas speckled with stars. Enoch stood before the hospital, a fortress of secrets bathed in the pale glow of the moon. Within its haunted halls, an ancient slumber was being disturbed. A cosmic entity stirred to wakefulness. As he ventured into the bowels of the hospital, the spectral figures gathered around him, their smoky forms writhing like smoke caught in a tempest. The labyrinthine corridors seemed to pulse around him, echoing the throb of an imminent cosmic birth. An unseen force guided him to the heart of the labyrinth, the burn unit, a gateway to the cosmic abyss. There, within the silence of the forgotten ward, reality began to unravel. Walls groaned under the strain of unseen forces, and the fabric of existence shivered, caught in the throes of a monstrous awakening. The cosmic entity, a formless terror lurking in the corners of mortal comprehension, began to emerge. Enoch's sanity teetered on the precipice, but his steadfast resolve rooted him firmly to the reality he was bound to protect. He clung on to his conviction, his heart echoing the rhythm of his debt repaid, a beacon in the storm of otherworldly chaos. The spectral figures converged, their smoky forms merging to form a colossal apparition. It reached out to the entity, their forms intermingling in a horrifying spectacle of cosmic communion. Yet amid this chaos, the apparition turned to Enoch, extending a tendril towards him. The whispers of the missing filled his ears, a plea for salvation. Summoning his courage, he stepped forward, reaching out to the spectral apparition. As he made contact, a wave of agony and longing crashed over him, the echoes of the lost souls reaching out from the abyss. Holding on to his determination, he whispered words of comfort, of absolution. The burn scars on his hand flared, the ghostly remnants of his trauma a mirror to the spectral anguish before him. Under his touch, the spectral apparition shimmered. The smoky tendrils started to dissolve, revealing the lost souls. One by one, they blinked out of existence, their departure marked by a sigh of relief, a gentle zephyr in the maelstrom. The cosmic entity recoiled, its monstrous form wavering under the onslaught of human resolve and empathy. With a final monstrous roar, it retreated, sinking back into the cosmic rift from which it emerged, the burn unit's walls sealing shut behind it. The silence that fell over Bridgeport was one of relief, of the calm that follows a storm. As dawn broke, the ordinary rhythm of life slowly resumed, an endearing testament to human resilience. The cosmic horror had awakened, and so had the town's guardian. Enoch stood amidst the hush of the new day, a silent sentinel of a tale that was written in the stars and etched in the heart of Bridgeport. He was the awakening in the absolution, the silent hero in the tale of an ordinary man turned extraordinary. Evelyn Carter, a creature of resilience born from the tumultuous cradle of past sorrows, stood on the precipice of the quaint yet hauntingly quiet town of Stamford. Her fiery hair fluttered in the wind, her pale green eyes mirroring the ancient charm of the place, seeping with hidden secrets. An imposing structure, the asylum towered over the rest of the town, its Victorian architecture a stark reminder of a bygone era. Its walls, faded by time, whispered countless tales of despair. Evelyn felt a familiar sting in her chest, her past experiences resonating with the silent screams trapped within these walls. "Quite a sight, ain't it?" A raspy voice broke her reverie. It was Jeb, a rickety old man who was her guide to the town. His frail hand pointed towards the asylum. "Reverend Whately's sanctuary, they call it. Makes the lost ones feel like home," he says. Evelyn turned to him, her curious gaze locked onto the amiable wrinkles on his face. "You seem to respect the Reverend, Jeb?" "Well, Miss Carter," he chuckled, "you don't judge a book by its cover, right? But then again, you're here to uncover more than just covers, I reckon." She smiled, her generous heart warming up to Jeb's wit. As a journalist, she had often confronted hypocrisy wrapped in reverence, but she chose not to voice her skepticism yet. Instead, she nodded, her curiosity burning brighter than the midday sun. "Yes, Jeb, I'm here for the whole story." Jeb tipped his hat, his eyes wrinkling at the corners. She watched him saunter away, his words echoing in her mind as she turned back to face the asylum. Evening seeped into Stamford, the golden hue of the sun softly enveloping the town, yet unable to penetrate the shadows looming around the asylum. A chill ran down her spine as she ventured closer, her footsteps echoing against the cobblestone path, stirring the quiet town into a gentle uproar. As she approached the asylum, she noticed a weathered plaque. "Sanctuary for the Lost, may God bless us all," it read. She couldn't shake off an eerie feeling as she looked at the asylum under the dying light of day. It was like an ancient beast lying dormant, yet observing her through unseen eyes. Lost in her thoughts, she was startled by a soft voice. "Are you lost, child?" Evelyn turned to see a woman dressed in faded nurse attire. Her gentle face contradicted the cold aura around her. It was Nurse Agatha, a loyal aide to Reverend Whately. Evelyn recalled her from her research. "No, I'm just exploring," Evelyn managed to say, her sincerity shining through her apprehensive gaze. "Well then, welcome to our humble abode, Miss Carter," Nurse Agatha said with a knowing smile, and Evelyn felt an icy hand run down her spine. Shadows were just beginning to deepen over Stamford, and her tale was yet to unfold. In the dim light of dawn, Evelyn began her descent into the heart of the asylum, the air growing colder with each step, carrying whispers of bygone madness. Flickers of her past traumas danced in the recesses of her mind. A distant echo, like the dull thud of a heartbeat, pulsated in rhythm with her own. The common room of the asylum bore a surreal quietness, an atmosphere of resigned desolation. Patients, lost in their world, wandered aimlessly, their eyes reflecting worlds she had once known all too well. Their despondency tugged at her generous heart, igniting a spark of determination. Across the room, she spotted Reverend Whately, his towering figure casting a long shadow over the inmates. His sermon, soft yet resonating, echoed through the room, the verses filled with promises of redemption, yet subtly tainted by a tinge of something darker. Nurse Agatha approached Evelyn, her serene smile concealing the asylum's underlying dread. "Our Reverend believes in healing, Miss Carter. He gives them hope." Evelyn watched the Reverend, her gaze steady. "And does it work, Agatha? Do they find their peace here?" Agatha hesitated before responding. "Everyone has their own journey, Miss Carter. Some find their peace, while others—" Her voice trailed off as she motioned toward a man in the corner, muttering incantations unintelligible to human comprehension. That night, Evelyn found herself restless, her mind tangled in the enigma that was Reverend Whately and his asylum. As she tossed in her sleep, fragments of her past mingled with the day's experiences, spawning an eerie dream. A vast cosmic abyss, punctuated by unknown horrors, stretched out before her. In its depths, she saw the asylum, a tiny speck against the infinite cosmos. She woke up, her heart pounding against her chest. She could still hear the echo of the cosmic horrors from her dream. A chill ran down her spine as a terrifying thought took root. Was she merely dreaming? Or was she witnessing something beyond human understanding? Days turned into weeks, and she found herself more intertwined with the asylum and its occupants. She spent hours talking with the patients, their stories echoing the horrors she had seen in her dreams. Reverend Whately remained an enigma, his cryptic sermons often filled with references to salvation from beyond the stars. The cosmic horrors in her dreams became more vivid, more horrifying. Yet she couldn't ignore the uncanny resemblance between these dreams and the Reverend's sermons. They all hinted at an entity, ancient and powerful, a cosmic creature from the depths of the universe. One evening, as she was poring over the town's old records, she stumbled upon a disturbing revelation. The asylum's building was not originally a medical facility, but a church dedicated to a forgotten deity. She felt a shiver run down her spine. The echoes from her past and the horrors of the present were converging into a chilling premonition. The asylum, the Reverend, her visions, everything was a piece of a larger, terrifying puzzle. A puzzle that she was yet to fully comprehend. The soft hum of a hymn floated through the asylum, spiraling up into the night sky, mingling with the starlight. The melody was soothing, almost hypnotic, but it did little to suppress the icy dread seeping into Evelyn's bones. Her dreams had grown increasingly darker, the cosmic entity permeating her every thought, her every vision. The asylum inmates, previously lost in their own worlds, now seemed to echo the entity's presence. She observed their rituals, their cryptic prayers directed to the cosmos, seemingly orchestrated by Reverend Whately. One afternoon, she decided to confront the Reverend, her green eyes reflecting a resolution born from fear and a relentless pursuit for the truth. "Reverend Whately," she began, her voice steady despite the thumping in her chest, "I've been having dreams, visions of a cosmic horror. It seems to connect to your sermons, to the inmates. What is happening here?" Whately studied her for a moment before speaking, his voice as calm as the sea before a storm. "You are experiencing a revelation, my dear," he declared. "Our celestial benefactor has chosen to reveal itself to you." Evelyn felt her heart flutter, a cold dread washing over her. The Reverend's words, coupled with her visions, gave form to the sinister shadows that had been looming over the town. As her gaze fell upon the asylum's inmates, she couldn't shake off the feeling that they were no mere patients, but emissaries of this cosmic horror. As the days blurred into weeks, she plunged herself deeper into the mystery, driven by a morbid curiosity and her own deepening connection to the entity. She began attending the Reverend's nightly sermons, each one hinting at the presence of the cosmic entity. One evening, in a rare moment of solitude, she found herself in the asylum's old chapel. Her fingers traced the ancient engravings on the stone walls, chilling to the touch. A cosmic symbol, eerily similar to what she'd been witnessing in her visions, caught her eye. Its intricate design seemed to pulsate, the echo of a cosmic rhythm in an earthly stone. As her understanding of the entity grew, so did her fear. She could feel its insidious influence permeating every corner of the asylum, every aspect of the town. Her dreams, her visions, were merely a reflection of the dark truth lurking beneath the asylum, hidden behind the Reverend's sermons and the town's quaint charm. As she lay in her bed that night, she felt a strange calmness wash over her. She knew the path ahead was laden with horrors she couldn't possibly comprehend. Yet she was ready. The echoes from her past had prepared her for this moment. She was ready to confront the emissaries of the dark, ready to delve deeper into the cosmic abyss, ready for whatever came next. Under the pallid glow of a waning moon, Evelyn found herself standing before the antique mirror in her room. Her reflection seemed almost unfamiliar, an echo of her past self distorted by the weight of her revelations. Her green eyes were now shadowed with fear, yet glinting with a relentless pursuit of the truth. In a fleeting moment of clarity amid the chaos, she decided to expose the Reverend and his ghastly practices. She began documenting her experiences, her visions, the inmates' eerie transformation, and the dark underbelly of the asylum masked by the Reverend's charismatic facade. However, the strain of living with the horrors was beginning to show. The visions were intensifying, causing bouts of debilitating headaches and depression. She found herself slowly turning into one of the inmates, her sanity teetering on the brink of the abyss. In one such vision, she found herself standing at the edge of a vast cosmic void. Amid the chaos, a formless entity observed her from the depths, its countless eyes shimmering with an alien intelligence. With newfound horror, she realized the entity was aware of her. The observer had become the observed, the hunter, now the hunted. The abyss was gazing back at her, drawing her deeper into its cold, unfeeling embrace. One day, while immersed in her research, Evelyn found a ciphered manuscript hidden within the town's archives. With painstaking effort, she decrypted it, revealing the asylum's damning truth. The building wasn't just a religious structure, but a portal, a gateway for the cosmic entity. She found herself spiraling, her grip on reality loosening with every passing moment. However, the damning truth gave her a renewed sense of purpose. The line between reality and her nightmares had blurred, but she had a tale to tell, a warning to give. As she plunged further into her investigation, she found herself strangely drawn to the entity. Every vision, every encounter felt like an invitation, a call from the depths of the cosmic abyss. The world around her receded into the background, a dull hum against the symphony of cosmic horrors. Evelyn was standing in the town square, under a sky smeared with an unnatural hue. The stars above seemed to shimmer and pulse, mirroring the rhythm of her mounting dread. The town of Stamford was now a tableau of eerie tranquility, its facade unmarred, but beneath it, a swirling vortex of unspeakable horror. Her revelations had sent tremors through the town, leaving in their wake a trail of unease and disbelief. The townsfolk, once oblivious to the darkness dwelling amongst them, were now confronted with a chilling reality. Yet even as they questioned the Reverend's actions, they fell deeper under the sway of the cosmic entity, their minds succumbing to its insidious influence. She walked towards the asylum, her heart pounding against her ribs, the cool night air filling her lungs with a foreboding chill. As she pushed open the ancient wooden doors, the asylum greeted her with an uncanny silence. The walls, bathed in cold, ethereal moonlight, bore witness to the unfolding doom. She found the inmates in the common room, their bodies swaying in rhythm with the Reverend's chanting. He stood at the center, his arms outstretched, his voice resonating with an alien tongue, and his eyes reflecting an unfathomable darkness. She realized with a bone-chilling clarity that the cosmic horror wasn't merely a force acting upon the asylum. It was there, intertwined with the very fabric of the building, the town, and its people. Her feet moved of their own accord, carrying her closer to the chilling spectacle. The cosmic entity pulsed within the Reverend, his words forming a symphony of horror that beckoned her closer, deeper into the abyss. Her heart thundered in her chest, her breath came in ragged gasps, but she didn't falter. As she stood before the Reverend, her voice cut through the eerie chanting, "Whiteley, stop this madness!" But her pleas fell on deaf ears, her words merely echoing against the monstrous orchestra of the cosmic entity. She felt an intense pain explode behind her eyes, her vision blurring with images of the cosmic horror, of countless realities intertwining and ripping apart. Her knees buckled beneath her as she fell, her consciousness teetering on the brink of the cosmic abyss. In her final moments of clarity, she felt the cosmic entity seeping into her body convulsing under its overpowering influence. And then there was silence. A silence so profound it drowned the chaos, swallowing the cries, the chants, and the echoes of the past. The cosmic entity had found its vessel, its gateway into their reality, and in turn, Evelyn had found her doom. Her last breath left her body in a shuddering sigh, her eyes reflecting the depths of the cosmic abyss one final time. Evelyn Carter, the tireless journalist, the fearless seeker of truth, met her end not with a bang, but with a whisper. Her body slumped to the ground, the echo of her screams still lingering in the asylum. As dawn broke over Stamford, the shadows receded, leaving in their wake a tale of horror and doom. The asylum stood silent and brooding, its secrets buried within its stone walls. In death, Evelyn had become an emissary of her own tale, a symbol of humanity's futile struggle against forces beyond their understanding. Her fate was a grim testament to a terrifying truth, that in the grand scheme of the cosmos, we are but insignificant specks, at the mercy of entities far beyond our comprehension. In the face of cosmic horrors, we are all inevitably doomed. As the cerulean curtain of daylight slipped beneath the horizon, Adrian watched the gentle light yield to an enveloping shroud of twilight. The quiescent town of New Haven, Connecticut, transformed under the pall of dusk. The skeletal branches of trees tracing macabre patterns on weathered cobblestone streets, their whispers borne on the chill wind like ghosts of the night. Adrian, an erstwhile soldier now private investigator, found himself on these spectral streets, summoned by hushed whispers and fearful pleas of the local folks. He was a tall man, his once robust frame now bearing the weight of an unseen past. His sea-green eyes held a depth, mirroring his own battle-scarred psyche. He was a veteran of conflict not just from the battlefields, but from personal turmoil that clung to him like a specter. The town hall stood stark against the gloaming, a monolith touched by the dwindling sunlight. It was here that he was greeted by the townsfolk. The mayor, a woman of advanced years yet commanding presence, clasped his hand. "Adrian, we're counting on you," she murmured, the lines on her face deepening with worry. He offered a nod of reassurance, his voice soothing. "I will do everything in my power, Mayor Cassidy." In the dimly lit town hall, he listened to the townsfolk's accounts. A young mother spoke of her nightly walks home, her words laden with trepidation. "I saw her, Mr. Adrian. A shadow, sobbing by the morgue. Chilling it was to the very marrow." An elderly man followed, lights moving in the morgue's windows, long after midnight. He shuddered, his gaze vacant. Listening, Adrian felt a prickle of unease beneath his calm facade. Yet his empathy outweighed the cold dread creeping in. PTSD, his constant companion, stirred within him, but he soothed it with practiced ease. His trauma was not his weakness, but his armor, making him a beacon of understanding in the growing gloom. As the evening waned into night, he felt the weight of the task set before him. Yet, he would not be dissuaded. He had come to New Haven carrying his own ghosts, his open mind and stalwart heart acting as his bulwark against the terrors of the unknown. The phantom occurrences swirling around the morgue were like a puzzle, a challenge that he found impossible to resist. "Your fears have been heard, and they will not go unaddressed," he promised the townsfolk as they dispersed, their expressions a mix of relief and apprehension. Alone in the echo of their concerns, he stood at the precipice of a shadow-laden mystery, the town's morgue looming large in his thoughts as the darkness of the night deepened. Under the aegis of a moon waxing into full bloom, New Haven transformed into an enigmatic landscape. Adrian found himself before the morgue, its stony facade bathed in a spectral luminescence that lent it an uncanny air. Time seemed to hold its breath around the silent building, as if the world itself feared to disturb the sleep of the departed. Armed with only a flashlight and his indomitable spirit, he approached the morgue. The building was an antique, a relic of a bygone era, its once elegant architecture now succumbing to the relentless march of time. He paused at the entrance, his hand hovering over the worn brass doorknob. He felt the familiar thrill of the unknown, a sense of danger interlaced with a profound curiosity that had guided him into the depths of human nature and, oftentimes, into the belly of his own demons. Once inside, he found himself ensnared in a dense quiet, the kind that clings to places untouched by daylight. Shadows grew thick and deep, pooling in the corners and crevices of the room. He could almost taste the spectral chill in the air, a silence so profound it was as if sound itself had been embalmed. As the night advanced, strange occurrences unfolded. A faint echo of a cry, a figure passing by the window. a cold spot that made his skin erupt in goosebumps. Each occurrence, a tendril of unease coiling around his heart. PTSD, his unwanted shadow, flared and recoiled, a dance he had become all too familiar with. In the quiet hours, he wandered through the corridors, his footfall a hollow echo. He found himself in front of a locked door, worn by time, yet bearing an air of solemn importance. Its existence seemed a secret whispered by the shadows. His heart echoed with the forgotten stories it held, a mystery that called to his investigator's instinct. Outside, as he stood lost in thought, he heard an indistinct murmur, a susurrus in the wind that had his hair standing on end. He turned, eyes scanning the shadow-clad streets, his pulse thrumming in his ears. It was then he saw it, a flickering light moving in a swift trajectory into the ground below the morgue, the faint strains of an anguished wail echoing in its wake. His breath hitched and he stood, a sentinel beneath the waxen moon, staring at the spot where the ghostly light had disappeared. His thoughts spun wild as his heart raced, the once forgotten tales of the townsfolk taking a horrifying shape in the palpable darkness. As the ghostly echoes died away, he was left with a chilling sense of foreboding. He knew with a certainty that froze his blood that he had stumbled onto a path that wound into the belly of a terrifying unknown. As night deepened, wrapping New Haven in a cloak of obsidian, Adrian, the solitary sentinel, found himself drawn to the spectral trail leading into the morgue's underbelly. Each step took him further away from the comforting familiarity of the world he knew and closer to a realm that thrummed with an uncanny resonance. His journey led him to a hidden passageway beneath the morgue, a labyrinthine descent of stone and shadow. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something faintly metallic, a hint of rust or perhaps blood. It was in these subterranean depths that he encountered the true horror that lurked beneath New Haven. In a cavernous chamber, illuminated by the unholy glow of flickering torches, he found them, a gathering of figures. With their faces obscured by grotesque masks, they stood hunched over a feast, their feeding frenzy a symphony of gnashing teeth and wet, slavering noises that echoed horrifically in the confines of the chamber. Adrian recoiled at the scene before him, his pulse roaring in his ears. He forced himself to look again, a slow, terrible understanding uncoiling in his gut. It was a cannibalistic feast that the cult relished, their delight echoing in the underground chamber, bouncing off the cold stone walls. He retreated into the shadows, fear crawling up his spine, a primal instinct screaming at him to flee. Yet he did not. For among the grotesquerie, he found a perverse fascination. It was a scene so horrifyingly surreal that it held him captive, a moth entranced by the glow of a deadly flame. His PTSD roused like a slumbering beast, each crunching bone and anguished scream igniting old wounds. Yet he reined in his panic, his resolve a brittle shield against the encroaching horror. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the cold, dread-infused air of the chamber. He was an investigator, a seeker of truth. Even in the face of such nightmarish revelations, his duty remained. He found himself drawn further into the depths of the cult's den, the darkness welcoming him, an initiate stepping into the realm of the forbidden. As Adrian emerged from the catacombs into the chill of dawn, he was not the same man who had descended into the abyss. He carried with him a horrific truth, a grotesque reality that lurked beneath the quiet streets of New Haven. The morgue, an edifice of dread, stood silent, basking in the cold light of dawn, its sinister secret concealed beneath its stony visage. The day seemed to crawl at a glacial pace, the town oblivious to the impending confrontation that loomed in the shadowy horizon. He moved through the town, the echoes of the horrifying feast still rattling in his bones. The mundanity of the town's routine held a surreal quality now, as if he was a specter moving among the living. His PTSD, an unwelcome guest, stirred within him. His past traumas, once confined to the battlefields and locked away in the recesses of his mind, surfaced. Yet these phantoms of the past were not a liability. Instead, they reminded him of the resilience he'd found in the face of unspeakable horrors. They fueled his resolve, acting as the crucible to his evolving courage. he spent the day preparing for the confrontation. His encounters with the townsfolk were tinged with a somber undertone, their innocent inquiries and concerns weaving a bittersweet symphony of normalcy and impending dread. He reassured them with the warmth in his gaze and the firm set of his shoulders, a promise of safety unsaid but not unnoticed. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows that danced like phantoms on the cobblestone streets, he found himself standing before the morgue once more. The building, innocuous in the dying light, seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the countdown to his showdown with the cult. The thin line between fear and excitement blurred, a potent cocktail that kept him rooted in his resolution. The final moments of daylight clung to the horizon as he descended back into the underbelly of the morgue. The underground chamber, still reeking of the horrifying feast, held an eerie stillness. Yet the shadows seemed to hum with a premonitory silence, a harbinger of the chaos to come. In the cavernous belly of the morgue, a silence hung like a pall. Adrian stood in the heart of this silence, its rhythmic pulse mirroring his own. The foreboding air was thick, a primal sense of impending danger permeating the cold stone walls. His mind echoed with the grotesque revelations from the previous night, memories coiling like serpents in the murky depths of his consciousness. The cult arrived as the hour neared midnight. Their presence filled the chamber, a palpable wave of dread washing over him. He was vastly outnumbered, a lone figure standing against the tide of an unholy congregation. The feast began, the horrid spectacle unfolding in a macabre tableau of gnashing teeth and raw, bleeding flesh. The air grew heavy with a primal, animalistic energy, the walls echoing with a symphony of the damned. As a beleaguered sentinel, he stood rooted in place, a solitary figure bathed in the flickering glow of unholy torches. His PTSD flared, old battlefields blooming in his psyche, their horrors dwarfed by the sight before him. But he did not flinch. He drew on his wellspring of courage, the darkness in his soul battling the abomination unfolding before him. Then in the depth of despair, a curious sensation overcame him. It wasn't fear, but fascination. The eldritch allure of the spectacle began to draw him in, a morbid curiosity whispering in his ear. He was at the edge of a precipice, the chasm of cosmic horror yawning before him. In the face of the cult's monstrous banquet, he felt the boundaries of his humanity slowly disintegrating. He found himself teetering on the verge of the abyss, its dark allure beckoning him. The transformation was insidious, a darkness that crept into his soul, a whisper in the dark. The fear that once rooted him in place shifted, morphing into a strange understanding. The cruel feast before him was not just a spectacle of terror, but a bizarre baptism into a world beyond his understanding. His terror waned, replaced by an alluring sense of belonging. The abyss had gazed back, and Adrian, the once steadfast sentinel, found himself irrevocably drawn into its depths. He became a part of the spectacle, his resolve not breaking, but transforming. The confrontation had not ended in a clash of violence, but in the silent acceptance of a man who had peered into the heart of cosmic horror and found a piece of himself within. Adrian stood among the cult, his silhouette merging with the darkness. The once quiet town of New Haven rested unaware of the monstrous truth beneath its tranquil surface. The sun would rise again, casting its light upon the town and its secret, etching the silhouette of the solitary figure against the secrets hidden beneath. A new dawn, and with it, the birth of a man who walked into the heart of cosmic horror and became one with it. Beneath the bruised sky of early morning, the city of Hartford began its day. Buses groaned under their human weight. The coffee houses echoed with boisterous laughter, and the iron giants of industry began their relentless song. Among the city's humdrum, Detective John Hart was a known silhouette, a steady figure among the transient cityscape. A man of remarkable tenacity, John carried his 45 years like an old watch, reliable, weathered, and unyieldingly precise. Yet his storm-gray eyes betrayed an inherent sensitivity, a testament to his seismic past. It was in those eyes that the scars of an Earth's fury remained etched, the echoes of an earthquake he survived years ago. His city knew him as their stalwart defender, but beneath the calm surface lay tectonic fissures, reminders of the ground that once betrayed him. This morning found him at the Heart Haven Cemetery, a tableau of grief under the pale sun. The spectacle of a desecrated grave, its earthly womb disturbed, marked the beginning of a peculiar investigation. Amidst the morning dew and hushed whispers of the bereaved, he knelt beside the gaping grave, his gaze hardening as he took in the profane scene. "The third this month, John," said Officer Mike Reynolds, a young cop with a freckled face, his voice shaky as he handed over the preliminary report. Each stolen body bore one consistency, a tie to AstraCorp, a corporate titan that presided over Hartford like a brooding leviathan. John acknowledged with a solemn nod, his fingers tracing the periphery of the violated grave. A grim silence ensued as the wind rustled through the headstones, whispering tales of quietus interrupted. This was not a mere crime. It was a transgression against the natural order, and John felt a creeping unease tingle his senses, an uncanny echo of the dread he felt before the earth shattered beneath his feet years ago. He returned home to find solace in the warmth of his daughter's laughter and his mother's loving presence. Their residence, modest and comforting, acted as a bulwark against the outside world, the place he vowed to protect at all costs. Yet that evening, as he tucked his daughter into bed, her innocent eyes reflecting the moonlight, a grave understanding dawned on him. The case he held in his hands threatened not just the city's peace, but the sanctuary he held dear. With renewed determination, he dove into the labyrinthine secrets of AstraCorp. Through their dominating facade, he sensed a tremor, a disturbance that mirrored the preludes of an earthquake. Yet this time, he was prepared for the shake. As he dug deeper into the corporate behemoth's ties with the deceased, his experienced gaze sought out the cracks beneath the polished veneer, every lead another step into the quaking mystery. Under the harsh neon glare of the Hartford Police Department, John faced the phantom of his latest investigation, a string of gruesome grave desecrations linked to the titan that was AstraCorp. His eyes scanned the autopsy reports, the sterile language of science doing little to veil the enormity of the violation. These weren't just bodies. They were lives once filled with dreams and desires, reduced now to puzzle pieces in a macabre game. John started paying visits to the bereaved families, seeking answers amidst their raw anguish. These encounters laid bare the human cost of his investigation, fueling his resolve to seek justice. Every grief-stricken face was a mirror, reflecting a world where the finality of death was desecrated, where silence was stolen from the sleeping. Late-night vigils at the cemeteries became routine, the tombstones standing guard as spectral sentinels. The silent air was thick with the smell of damp earth and wilting flowers, an eerie backdrop to his nocturnal sojourns. He felt an affinity with the spectral landscape, both touched by the merciless hand of violation. A breakthrough came in the form of a peculiar detail buried in an autopsy report. Subdermal markings, he muttered to himself, tracing his finger over the unnerving images of geometric patterns discovered beneath the skin of the victims. It was an alien signature, a possible key to unravel the cadaverous puzzle. He approached the imposing AstraCorp building, its gleaming facade a stark contrast to the city's gritty architecture. He was escorted through a maze of corridors, the air humming with corporate efficiency. His meeting with the company's representative, a smoothly articulate woman named Marianne Hyde, revealed little. Yet his keen senses picked up on the tremors beneath her polished exterior, the subtle contractions that hinted at the unsaid. "What does AstraCorp have to do with the deceased, Miss Hyde?" he asked, the room silent, save for the distant hum of machinery. "I assure you, Detective, we have cooperated fully. Our company mourns the loss of our former employees," she replied, her practiced smile failing to reach her eyes. Her answers, like the walls of AstraCorp, were impervious, revealing nothing. John left the Titan's lair, not with answers, but with a renewed sense of purpose. As he stepped into the cool Hartford night, he felt the weight of the challenge he had embraced. The city slept under a starlit sky, oblivious to the alien horrors that lurked beneath their feet. He gazed up at the celestial expanse, feeling the distant hum of cosmic horror encroaching his reality. In his hands, he held a piece of the puzzle, a sinister whisper from beyond the stars etched under the skin of the departed. The reality of the cadaverous puzzle was more profound, darker than he had imagined. His path was leading him not merely through the labyrinth of a corporate titan, but into the abyss of cosmic terror. He woke with a heavy realization lingering from the corridors of his dreams. He was no longer merely investigating the perverse defilement of graves, but a full-fledged invasion, not of land or resources, but of the last sanctum of privacy, the human mind. His investigation took a darker turn as the sinister reality behind the subdermal markings became clearer. Each etching was not just an alien signature, but a brand of possession, a stamp of an invasive parasite from the vast cold cosmos. The dread within him reverberated with an all-too-familiar tremor. AstraCorp, the titan straddling his city, was implicated deeper into this alien intrusion. He wrestled with his inner demons. The invasive entities he sought to expose were a grotesque reflection of the groundquakes from his past, both invasive, destructive forces that uprooted reality. The veil of normalcy was disintegrating, revealing the terrifying sight of human puppets under the influence of an otherworldly puppeteer. The cosmic horror was here, residing within the minds of its victims. During his confrontation with one of the controlled victims, an ex-employee of AstraCorp, the detective bore witness to the parasite's influence. "The stars speak to us, detective," the man uttered in a distant voice, his gaze devoid of any trace of his former self. The scene was surreal, chilling to the bone, a nightmare spun into reality. Later, as he held his daughter close, the haunted eyes of the controlled still echoed in his mind. The parasite had erased the man's essence, his humanity lost amidst the echoing whispers of the stars. He found himself standing on a precipice overlooking an abyss. On one side lay his beloved city and family. On the other, the unraveling reality of alien domination. One particularly jarring meeting with Marianne Hyde ended with an icy proclamation. "AstraCorp is pioneering the future, detective," she announced, her voice resonating with an alien undertone. It sent a shiver down his spine, a stark reminder of the entity he was up against. The twilight over Hartford found its echo in John's eyes as he grappled with the unsettling revelations. His investigation had plunged him into a tempest of cosmic horror, with AstraCorp's imposing titan standing at its eye. As he further unraveled the truth, he found himself walking the thin line that separated his reality from a terrifying nightmare. Each step led him into the heart of the Leviathan. AstraCorp, the puppet master, was but a puppet itself, a grotesque marionette dancing to the alien parasite's tune. Each string of control stretched from the boardrooms of the corporation to the vast cold cosmos, guided by an unseen, inhuman hand. The horrors were not confined to the graves. They slithered into the streets of Hartford, subtly pulling the strings of the unsuspecting. The reality shook him to his core. It reminded him of the earthquake that had torn his world apart years ago. The ground beneath his feet had shattered then, just as his reality was shattering now. Only this time the shaking was not of tectonic plates, but of the very fabric of human existence. During another late-night investigation at AstraCorp, John was ambushed. The last image before darkness swallowed him was of Marianne Hyde, her figure bathed in an unearthly glow, her eyes whispering tales of starlit horrors. Within the chrysalis of unconsciousness, John found himself suspended. His existence teetered on the edge of two realities, one of comforting familiarity, the other of cosmic horror. Around him, the omnipresent hum of AstraCorp melded with whispers from the stars, the eerie symphony of the invaders. AstraCorp had evolved into a grotesque womb for the alien parasites, its concrete walls echoing with their inhuman language. Now within this very belly of the beast, he struggled against the invasive forces, his mind a battlefield. Amidst the shadowy corridors of his mind, he faced the intruding entity. The alien parasite, an eldritch horror, revealed itself not as a solid form, but as a constellation of thoughts, an echo from the distant cosmos. It sought to weave him into the tapestry of its invasive symphony, to make him another marionette in its grotesque performance. But John resisted. He was a survivor, a stalwart defender. His mind became a fortress, his thoughts its soldiers. He wrestled with the invader, each memory, each emotion a weapon against the alien parasite. "Detective, accept our guidance. Together we can transcend," echoed the voice of Marianne Hyde, a grim requiem amidst his struggle. Yet her voice now sounded distant, a fading echo within his fortified mind. "No, we are more than your puppets," he responded, his defiance reverberating within his psyche. His voice was the roar of an earthquake, a testament to his survival and resilience. His words echoed in the grim halls of Ostrocorp. His physical form, though immobilized, vibrated with his mental struggle. The entities could feel it, a resistance unlike any other. The strings of control trembled, a dissonant note in their symphony. In the end, he emerged, not unscathed but victorious. He woke to find the once imposing monolith of Astrocorp in disarray. The invasion halted. His resistance had sent shockwaves through the controlling entities, a ripple effect freeing the others. He left Astrocorp, his body carrying the remnants of an invasion survived, his spirit bearing the triumph of a mind reclaimed. The city of Hartford lay ahead, oblivious of the cosmic horrors it had been saved from. John was no longer just the city's loyal guardian, but its silent savior. As he looked upon his city, he knew he had survived yet another disaster. This time, however, he bore not just the physical, but psychological scars of his survival, his perception forever altered by his brush with cosmic horror. His path would now lead him away from the city he had once sworn to protect, not out of fear or defeat, but with the understanding that his struggle was far from over. As the cityscape of Hartford receded in his rearview mirror, John carried with him the memories of an invasion thwarted, a mind reclaimed, and the promise of a continued fight against the alien horrors that lay in wait among the stars. The town of Waterbury, Connecticut, lay sprawled under the achingly blue sky, an everyday canvas of comings and goings, small victories and losses, births and deaths. Yet John Thornfield saw more than the mundane and the ordinary, his seasoned eyes scanning beyond the surface, where shadows danced and secrets hid. Thornfield, a man worn by age and strife, stood at the edge of the bustling town. His countenance bore an understated gravity, graying hair pulled back from a face lined with wisdom and sorrow. He was quiet, the kind of man you could easily overlook, but whose depths were profound once plumbed. He arrived in town armed with a battered notebook, a camera, and a history seared with trauma. Bipolar disorder had been his unwelcome companion for years, coloring his world in broad strokes of light and dark. Still, he stood resilient, his journalistic quest for truth a beacon against the tumultuous tide of his past. As he navigated the narrow cobblestone streets, he caught snippets of conversations laden with everyday concerns, grocery lists, and school events. Yet a peculiar unease hung heavy, a silken thread weaving itself into the fabric of Waterbury's everyday life. It was subtle, like a low hum in the background, discernible only to the keenest observers. He found himself drawn towards the heart of the town, to the weathered structure of the local library. Its ancient facade was etched with the passage of time, like an old parchment filled with silent stories. Inside, amid the dust-tinged scent of old books and the soft rustle of turning pages, he found a treasure trove of Waterbury's history. As he sifted through the antiquated manuscripts and crumbling maps, the silhouette of an ancient church beneath the town began to form. It was a relic from an age long forgotten, its history buried beneath layers of time, much like the ruins themselves. This was the secret that lay beneath Waterbury, a secret whispered in hushed tones and veiled in fearful glances. Over a cup of lukewarm coffee at the local diner, he confronted the town historian, an elderly woman named Agnes. She was reticent at first, her gaze clouded with unease, but with his gentle insistence and genuine curiosity, she relented. The church was old, Very old, she murmured, her voice barely audible above the diner's steady murmur. Something happened. Long ago. I don't know what, but they say the earth swallowed it. A cryptic start to a mystery that was yet to reveal its full breadth. But it was enough for him. He had his lead, the buried legacy that shrouded Waterbury, the hushed whispers, the ancient church. There was more to unearth, secrets hiding in the bowels of this seemingly ordinary town. As the day gave way to night, Thornfield found himself standing at the edge of a gaping hole near the center of the town, the rumored site of the unearthed church. In the waning light, the pit seemed to yawn wider, its darkness more profound, an abyss that promised both revelation and peril. As he stared into the void, he felt the stirrings of an ominous unease. His thoughts were abruptly interrupted by an eerie melody carried by the night breeze. He turned to see a group of townsfolk walking past, their faces obscured by the twilight, voices harmonizing a haunting hymn that resonated in the quiet night. Their chant seemed to echo from the pit, the melody a serenade to the hidden horrors that lay beneath. As the spectral procession disappeared into the night, he was left alone once more, staring into the gaping maw of the ancient church. The buried legacy of Waterbury was starting to emerge from the shadows, but its full unveiling was yet to come. The dawn broke over Waterbury with a deceptive serenity, the golden light washing over its quaint architecture, throwing the town into sharp relief against the mystery that lurked beneath. Thornfield rose with the sun, his soul alive with a journalistic fervor, the lead of yesterday's revelations serving as a compass guiding his explorations. He began his day at the edge of the gaping chasm, staring into the abyss that promised revelations. The workers were just beginning their toil, the clanging of their tools echoing off the stone walls of the ancient church, their grim faces a stark contrast to the vibrant morning light. The air of unease around the pit was more pronounced in the harsh light of day, a stark reminder of the obscured history that lay shrouded in the town's heart. His fingers traced the worn edges of his notebook, his mind whirling with questions that yearned for answers. It was here, on this precipice of the known and unknown, that he felt the first palpable touch of the town's buried secret. As he descended into the belly of the unearthed church, the world above seemed to recede, replaced by a cool, ominous quiet that was punctuated only by his footsteps in the distant echoes of the workers' tools. The air turned heavy, dense with the weight of untold history and forgotten lore. Shadows clung to the ancient walls of the church, whispering tales of past lives and past sins. Once inside, he found himself in a vast chamber, its architecture a relic of bygone eras, its grandeur muted by time but undeniably present. Intricate carvings adorned the walls, faded murals telling stories of celestial beings and sinister rites, their cryptic symbolism a testament to an ageless past. In the heart of the chamber stood a haggard old man, his features weathered by time. He introduced himself as Thomas, the foreman overseeing the excavation. His eyes held an unspoken dread, his voice a timbre of resignation. "Strange things, Mr. Thornfield," he confessed. "I've seen things. In the shadows, workers talking in tongues, forgetting their families. They ain't the same after working here." His revelations stirred a chilling realization in Thornfield. The subtle oddities he had noticed among the townsfolk began to coalesce into a pattern, one that was eerily intertwined with the ancient church. The whispered reverence for the keepers, the townsfolk's unsettling behavior, the unearthed church. They all pointed towards a malignant entity that lurked in the heart of Waterbury. As night fell and he retreated from the depths, he could not shake off the spectral echoes of the unearthed church, its haunting melodies lingering in his mind. The quaint facade of Waterbury was starting to crack, revealing the insidious secret that threatened to consume its denizens. A darkness was brewing, a silent tempest that promised to shroud the town in its inky embrace. As he lay in his bed that night, a sense of trepidation took root. His journey into the shadow was just beginning. There was more to uncover, more to fear. The following day in Waterbury dawned under a veil of clouds, the sun's warm radiance hidden behind an iron-gray curtain. It seemed as though the town itself was reflecting Thornfield's growing apprehension. He found himself standing on the precipice of an ever-deepening enigma, its echoes reverberating through the fabric of the seemingly idyllic town. His inquiries led him to the old town hall, a regal building steeped in history. Here, amidst the musty scent of old wood and parchment, he pored over the town's archived records, tracing the roots of the keepers. The brittle pages whispered tales of a secretive sect, their existence intertwined with Waterbury's in the ancient church's history. He found himself drawn into a labyrinth of arcane symbolism and cryptic lore. The keepers, it seemed, were not just a part of Waterbury's past, but were its invisible puppeteers, their shadowy tendrils wrapped around the lives of the townsfolk. The veiled reverence for the keepers started making sense, their influence permeating the very soul of the town. Over the next few days, he navigated the town, watching the locals through new lenses. He noticed their vacant gazes, the whispered hymns they hummed under their breaths, the strange symbols painted on their doors. His conversations with the townsfolk were littered with coded language and hushed reverence, painting a chilling picture of an insidious cult. One evening, he found himself at the town's tavern, engaging in hushed conversations over a glass of bitter ale. His companion was a man named Joseph, a simple laborer who was part of the excavation team. "The keepers," Joseph murmured, glancing nervously around the tavern. "They watch over us, protect us." His eyes held a disconcerting mix of fear and adulation. His words, uttered in a near whisper, echoed the sentiment of the town, a terrifying blend of reverence and dread. As he delved deeper into the enigma of the keepers, he found himself drawn into a nightmarish vortex. It was as if an unseen curtain was being slowly drawn back, revealing the monstrous tableau that was Waterbury. The ancient church, the strange symbols, the fearful reverence, they were all pieces of an intricate puzzle. With each passing day, he felt the cold grip of the keepers tightening around Waterbury. It was a chilling realization, the sensation akin to a creeping shadow at the edge of his vision. It seemed as though he was a solitary beacon of sanity in a town spiraling into a maelstrom of madness. As he lay in his bed that night, he could not shake off the spectral echoes of the day's revelations. The quiet ticking of his bedside clock seemed to mimic the soft whisperings of the town, a relentless drone that bore into his mind. Waterbury was not just under the keepers' influence, it was embraced in their sinister clutches. Yet his relentless pursuit of truth prevailed. He was standing at the threshold of a haunting revelation, one that was steeped in the throes of the unfathomable. In the following days, a palpable transformation fell over Waterbury. Thornfield awoke to a scene that seemed etched out of a fevered dream, an unsettling canvas of grotesque realities. He observed from the solitary window of his room the town enshrouded in an eerie stillness. The streets were empty, and the usually vibrant marketplace was deserted. That morning, he ventured into the desolate town, each step echoing against the cobbled streets. The once mundane homes stood like silent sentinels, their windows staring blankly back at him. Their facades bore the obscure symbols of the keepers, a chilling testament to the cult's insidious reach. As he journeyed through the heart of the town, he encountered several of the townsfolk. They were transformed, their formerly warm faces now blank and distant. Their voices echoed with cryptic phrases, their gazes vacant, as if they were mere vessels for a will not their own. He felt a chill creep down his back, the eerie spectacle before him, stark against the reality he had known. His venture led him to the edge of the gaping chasm, the excavation site of the ancient church. The workers were gone, replaced by a haunting quiet that seemed to hum with an unseen energy. The church stood ominously at the heart of it all, a silent behemoth bearing the town's forgotten past. Compelled by an invisible force, he descended into the gaping mouth of the church once more. The cold silence of the stone walls felt ominous, whispers of the unspeakable echoing around him. In the heart of the church, he discovered a hidden chamber, its entrance shrouded by shadows. Inside, he found himself in the midst of an intricate tableau. The room was decorated with the same cryptic symbols he had seen around town, their meaning a mystery that gnawed at him. At the center, an ornate pedestal held a grotesque artifact. The object pulsed with an unnatural energy, its form shifting and undulating, defying comprehension. It seemed to embody the essence of the keepers, a touchstone to the madness that had gripped Waterbury. As he reached out to the artifact, a sudden shock surged through him, a torrent of images flooding his mind. He saw the townsfolk congregating in the church, their voices raised in a chant that echoed off the ancient walls. He saw them fall into a trance-like state, their minds being twisted and shaped by an unseen entity. He witnessed the birth of the Keepers, their origins far more sinister and ancient than he could have imagined. When the visions faded, he found himself alone in the chamber, his breath ragged and his heart pounding. The truth had been revealed to him, a terrifying glimpse into the shroud of madness that had fallen over Waterbury. His quest for truth had led him to the very heart of the horror that gripped the town. Shaken, he retreated from the chamber, the echo of the haunting visions ringing in his ears. As he emerged from the depths of the church, the looming edifice of the town greeted him. The shroud of madness hung over Waterbury, its touch seeping into the very fabric of existence. Thornfield awoke with the haunting echoes of his discovery still lingering, the townsfolk's blank faces etched into his memory. The once quaint Waterbury now resembled a grotesque portrait, a panorama of lunacy. Yet amidst the madness, he found himself compelled to carry on, his journalistic fervor transformed into a desperate yearning for escape. The town was still eerily silent, a surreal spectacle of frozen time. He walked through the deserted streets, his heart echoing with a dismal foreboding. His mind churned with the revelations of the hidden chamber, the horrifying visions, and the sinister origins of the Keepers. At the edge of the town, he found the path leading away from Waterbury, a deserted highway stretching into the distance. The route was silent, the surrounding countryside seemingly untouched by the malaise that gripped the town. It was a path that promised escape, a path that offered a glimmer of hope. His escape from the town was unhindered. No townsfolk blocked his path. No unseen hands pulled him back. He walked the highway, his steps quick and determined. The sight of Waterbury receding in the distance brought a momentary relief, a brief respite from the insanity. As he walked, he felt a strange sensation creeping over him. The eerie stillness of the town seemed to follow him, the sense of being watched, of being followed. The whispers of the townsfolk, the cryptic symbols, and the chilling image of the pulsating artifact in the church's hidden chamber. They seemed to echo in his mind, an incessant drone that refused to fade. The rest of his journey was a blur, a kaleidoscope of landscapes that passed in a whirl. The tranquility of the countryside, the hum of distant towns, and the eventual embrace of the city were all transient realities, fleeting specters of normalcy. Each step took him further from Waterbury, from the horrors of the Keepers, but the echoes of the nightmare refused to leave him. As night fell over his new refuge, Thornfield found himself staring into the mirror. His reflections seemed distant, an echo of the man who had arrived in Waterbury days ago. He had escaped the town's physical boundaries, but the shroud of madness lingered, a haunting legacy that threatened to drown him. The horrors of Waterbury and the Keepers had become a part of him, a macabre tattoo etched onto his soul. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed our content, show your support with a like and subscribe, and stay notified by hitting the bell icon. Expect more cosmic horror from Eldritch Tales Factory, and feel free to explore our other stories. See you in the next video.